Well, welcome, Homa. It's so nice to be with you today. And we're just going to dive in. Let's just get started in a fun conversation. So, one question we like asking our guests is to get to know a little bit about you and how the work that you do. Um, you know, we're kind of also collecting our heroes. You're one of them, and like any good superhero, superheroes have superpowers. We're curious, what is your superpower? And then, like all good superpower stories, there's like, how did you get it? Were you bitten by
Hmm.
a radioactive spider that gave it to you? And then, what do you use that superpower for?
Hmm. Wow. Well, thank you. I'm super honored. I don't often wear a shawl, but I feel like it's a cape. So I'm wearing this shawl as a cape. Now that we're talking about superpowers and superheroes. Gosh, I think it's interesting, like if you've been around as long as I have, I'm gonna have a milestone birthday soon that starts with a six. Um, so I have, just kind of reflecting on like, I guess even just as a woman, like having confidence that actually I do have a superpower, or, that's sort of interesting to even be, you know, able to talk about it. I think for me, one thing that's been kind of powerful in my life is sort of being a connector. And it's connecting people. Like I love to connect people. I always do that, but also connecting ideas. And so my path to where I am now has not been a straight line. This is about my like fourth career. It did not start in education, but it always was around um, kind of wanting to be useful in the world and connecting what I care about with what I do and trying to be authentic to that, even when I wasn't clear what it was. So I think, like sometimes jokingly, people have, like, it's like, well, how did I get to do what I'm doing? Um, and in a lot of ways, whether it's writing a book, starting a company, doing collaborations, there's sometimes like somebody has like kind of, there's a little window that's open. And I've been pretty good at like having a sense of what path to take, or not what path to take, but kind of pushing that window open to become more like a door and following um, perception around what I think my environment needs, what I think the connection between my interest and trying to be useful. Um, and yeah, so that's been sort of interesting. And I think part of that comes from my own background. I think I've always been sort of an outsider, whether it's as, the like brown girl in my elementary school in Fort Wayne, Indiana, to just my different different quote unquote my name, my background, my even like my faith, my Baha'i faith, which a lot of people have never heard of, and I always have to like prepare to like say what it is. So always just being a little bit of an outsider, I feel like that's a little bit of a superpower. And that's actually been something I've been talking to people about. Like, we kind of touched on, we've seen each other at some conferences recently. And one of the themes I've been talking about is leadership in this liminal time, that we're in this time between stories, in a time between worlds. It feels really unsettled, complex, ambiguous, all those VUCA words. Um, and as much as it feels unsettling to be in a VUCA time, I think particularly for people who felt like kind of on the outside of systems or cultures, you've always been liminal. So liminality could be a superpower. And that's something that we've been talking about actually. So come full circle
Mhm.
that to be in liminal for some people, and I think this is the beauty of having a wide range of voices at the table, in the decision making, whatever it is because then you get people who know what it's like to always be in a liminal space
Mhm.
and see that as a strength instead of just, ooh, I feel really um, uneasy about this. But for some people, it's a strength. And some people, when I talk about this with them, it's like a lot of nods, like, oh, yeah, I've been code switching my whole life.
Hmm.
I've been translating what's happening at home with what's happening at school or work my whole life. So maybe, I don't know, that's like a convoluted answer, but that's a little bit of it's like connection in a much broader sense than just, you know, I think you should go for this job, but like a bigger way of looking at that.
Thank you for sharing that. I find that so inspiring, so much resonates. And that's the part that then feels inspiring to learn from. I'm curious because your experience is so uniquely yours. You talk about even your career path going from um, different industries or different roles, and then also your background and so on. It's uniquely yours. And so much of what you do to be useful is connect to others and have others kind of move through their own journeys or develop their own leadership. I'm curious how you translate what you've learned
Mm,
um, into somebody else's leadership growth, if that makes sense.
wow.
Because you're not telling them what to, I mean, having learned from you in your sessions too, you're never telling us what to think.
Mm,
How have you become so useful to others when their experience might be so different than yours?
mm. Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, thank you for saying, how have I become so useful? So I'm still wondering about that. But I think, I have done a lot of thinking about empathy from a much more profound level than maybe, like reading an article that advocates for this, or it's the beginning of the design thinking process, but like really deeply. And that's a little bit of this living in liminal, like code switching all the time is being able to try to think about what are the needs of the person that I'm talking to. I think that's a little bit of liminal space too. It's getting outside of myself to really deeply care, listen, connect with who I'm working with. And, you know, like I do a lot of work on strategic planning with different schools. And we always say, this is not about your consultant. It is not about us. It's your voice, your community, your work. So I actually am very conscious of that. And I think so many things um, are developed when we're conscious about it. So, like, be meta, talk about the thing that you're going to talk about what you're going to talk about and why and how. And that is a way to start sense making. And so it's like this sense making together. I also think it really helps because I really enjoy that. So I enjoy trying to, like deeply connect with someone so it's their process and their voice that's coming out. I mean, it's just more interesting than only hearing my own perspective and ideas. So, um, I think that's a important way, and I do think that's one of the reasons I've been very fortunate to work with a wide range of individuals and organizations because that's something that I do. Like, I'm not a great financial numbers person. I'm not great at like adapting to the newest technology. But I one thing I'm pretty good at is this like how do I get a deep listening so there's a connection and we get to like a more profound why, a more profound aha.
I mean, that goes back to even where you started, right? Talking about the choices that you made in your career and your life and seeing those openings in the window and turning those into a door, it feels very mindful. It feels very present and very open, right? I mean, and then the way that you talk about that just feels like that you've always been kind of receptive to being in those liminal spaces.
Mm.
Is that something that you've had to work at, or is that just kind of who you've always been?
It's a little of both. I definitely think it takes work. It takes
Yeah.
effort. You don't just wake up and you're receptive to others who are different from you. So I've been very lucky to literally, like, even as a child, like, be raised with certain mindsets that were very much about connecting and this idea of like finding oneness, connection, unity, and diversity. Like, I kind of grew up with those ideas. I grew up with ideas of being a citizen of the world. And that's one reason why I wrote my first book, Growing Up Global, Raising Children to Be at Home in the World. That yellow, which direction is it there?
Right there.
Uh, that I knew that, like, I was really lucky to have that mindset growing up. And so I was looking at, like, what can I do for my kids? How can that pass on to others? So it is both something that you work at, you're conscious about. I mean, talk about it at the dinner table, talk about it in different ways. But then as you work on it, it becomes habit.
Yeah. It also feels deeply connected. Sorry, Deep, I'm asking two in a row. It feels deeply connected to something that we talk about a lot, but I think also ties into work you're doing with the Questions Institute, which is asking questions,
Yeah.
right? That state of curiosity. And I mean, that keeps coming up over and over, especially in this age of AI, where there are so many answers, but do you know the questions to ask? And that leaning in and
Yeah.
being curious, I think, is just one of the most important skills that people can work with students on acquiring, but also as adults practicing. It just feels
Yeah.
like you're a very, I don't know, that's kind of it's all around you in so many different ways.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty remarkable since we only started the Big Questions Institute in 2019, and then it really took on a lot more kind of momentum in 2020 with the pandemic. But to land on this idea of both fearless inquiry, just keep asking the questions or whatever questions. It is such an uncertain time that if there is an environment that's safe enough to ask the question, ask lots of questions in, the answers start to come out. And like one of the, very deliberate pieces of our first, we had the 9 Big Questions book. Now we have the 12 Big Questions book, and they're both free downloads on our website. So we want anyone and everyone to use it. And that's been like a real deliberate, kind of like a professional generosity. We just want people to use it and see what happens. But none of our questions start with how. So we're really deliberate on that. They're, things like, what is sacred? That's our first question. What is learning? Why do we fill in the blank? Who is unheard? Where is the power? So, and there's more. But what is success? These questions, we think that as you ask the questions, as you explore with curiosity, humility, wonder, how becomes clear. Like, often, how is in the room, but you have to kind of do this excavation first through being present and asking questions.
Having worked with so many people in your career, and had these really thoughtful conversations with them, I'm curious as you think on what has inspired you in leadership. what are some traits or qualities, what are things that you've observed in folks that you think to yourself, well, that's effective leadership, or that
Mm,
is good
that's what I
leadership.
want to be
Hmm.
and do. Um, the thing that's coming to my mind right now is, kind of like I mentioned the word generosity is when leaders can lead with abundance and generosity and not, it's like that less of a clenched fist of a zero-sum game and competition and like that kind of letting it go. Like literally just now, I clenched my fist really hard and then I let that go. It's kind of a good hand exercise, by the way. But doing that, even I can feel that in my body. And that's something I've been actually asking people as we work on some heavy things, like where are you feeling this in your body? Which is something I've learned from Professor Howard Stevenson. He's amazing at locating where, especially in cases of deep difficulty, trauma, harm, where are you feeling it in your body? But also just in case, like there's so much distress. Um, and I do think I have worked with leaders who they are very scared and their stance is very clenched, um, metaphorically and physically. And it's really hard to see beyond the crisis or beyond somebody challenging you, um, to think more generatively. And so that's part of this. It's all connected to the other stuff we're talking about. I think that consciousness as you start your day and think about like the mod, like when I think about leaders who've been abundant and generous, like, wow, they made such an impact, whether it's generous over a silly thing. I'll just tell you, like, this is a silly example, but I was at a conference recently, and this colleague, there was a dinner, and I was like late to the party. And she said, no, it would be great if like this additional whole group would come. We're changing the location, we're changing the table. It would be great for you to be there. And I was like, wow, like it was inconvenient for her, but it had like such an impact on me that they would do that. Um, that's it's a little example, but I think like don't underestimate the power of like, in a way, it translates as kindness, as generosity, um, that is leading abundantly. And there is so much scarcity right now in our world that to be able to show that in your own life is almost like taking power back, I think.
That just resonates deeply. I mean, 14 years ago, I met Maddie Hewitt at an
Ah,
AAIE conference, and I sat next to her. I didn't know her. And she's like, "Who are you? What do you do?" And she just asked me questions. And then she said, "You need to meet so and so. You need to meet." And she danced me around the room and introduced me to people. And it meant so much to me. And like you, I've been trying to kind of pay that forward ever
yeah.
since. And I think that ties back to where you started originally with what your superpower is. You said connecting. Um,
Mhm.
you're a connector. And that is so powerful and important in this field because it's not about us. Um, and when
Yes.
we bring people together, great things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I totally agree. And I love Maddie.
Maddie fan club around the world.
Yes, this is. I hope she hears this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this
Yeah.
is our time, although I wish we could keep going on forever and ever, but that also feels like a beautiful place to end on. But there's more conversations to continue to have through various ways to connect with you. And so we'll be sure to share some of that out with folks who are interested in connecting with you directly and connecting with your work. Thank you for your professional generosity for having this
Oh,
conversation with us. And we look forward to the next one.
thank you. I'm so honored. Thank you so much.
Oh,
It's really
thank you.
wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you.